Whalen and Joe Bartel here with you. It's the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, off-season edition. Joey, we got actual news to discuss this week. We'll talk some quarterback rankings as well. Take a look at Dynasty tiers, best ball tiers, how those compare, how those may change as we get closer to the season. But the Giants have signed another quarterback, Joe. As you may recall, they already have Jameis Winston. They already have Tommy DeVito. They are now adding Russell Wilson to this mix. Yet another God-fearing man in that quarterback room. I look, the landing spots for Russell Wilson were going to be limited. There weren't that many teams that made sense.
Right.
And I'm not saying this just because, Jameis is so funny. I was looking forward to Jameis being the Giants quarterback. Yes, there would be comedy value. There would also be production. I'm not crossing that out though, because Jameis is one of those guys, wherever he lands, he ends up seeing the field through injury, through bad performance from the starter. Like I don't think the book is totally closed on Jameis Winston starting games for the Giants this season. The Giants win total, by the way, it is up at some books are starting to roll those out. I know ESPN Bet put them up earlier today. 4.5 is the number for the Giants. So this Russell Wilson signing, not exactly moving the needle there.
Well, first off, Tommy DeVito's agent, he cut the check for you. Thank you for including him in that conversation.
He's in the room.
The Giants quarterbacks. Yet he technically is in the room. Yeah, the agent sent you money. So there you go. I loved the memes for the first 3 or 4 days of Winston signing with the Giants, and then Malik Neighbors getting 150 catches, 2,500 receiving yards, and he'll go for 5 touchdowns. But also the memes regarding Travis Hunter, that clearly the Giants are going to draft him because he won't just be catching passes, but also tackling the interception that Jameis Winston throws. That Russell Wilson has ended those memes is very upsetting to me, because I was hoping that would carry over at least into some portion of the offseason. But I would assume the Giants got word either from Aaron Rodgers' agent or just the lack of conversation over the past week, 2 weeks or so, that Rodgers is not signing with the Giants, and therefore they pivoted to a different veteran. I'm a little bit surprised because I thought Winston was really in that tier of backup quarterback range, but could still start, sort of like the Jacoby Brissett we saw last year for the Patriots. So for the Giants to double down and get another quarterback that feels like a slight tier above, but not dramatically, and to the point where Vegas only has him at 4.5 wins. I mean, that's pretty incredible. For Malik Neighbors, and truly, Nick, this feels like the answer for fantasy implications. It has nothing to do with the quarterback play, and if you want to have either one, but how valuable is Malik Neighbors? You obviously want Jameis Winston out there, and I think Russell Wilson is your quarterback for the Giants dramatically impacts Malik Neighbors' ADP. I would assume the second-year receiver is going to be something like a top 24 pick when it's all said and done, at least early August, and I would be happy paying that price if it was Winston throwing the ball. Not so much Russell Wilson, because that's going to be a scenario where I think the moon balls, which he still is really good at, and we have to acknowledge that doesn't really play to what I believe Malik Neighbors is going to have to do for that offense, which really lacks another piece besides Darius Slayton.
Yeah, that's the thing. Malik Neighbors is not a moonball receiver necessarily, and maybe he can be that, right? I mean, he was that. It
doesn't help his strong suits. I think that's
right.
That's the way to say it. Yeah,
yeah. Well, I think part of it too is he spent much of last season with Daniel Jones throwing him the ball, right? So it's like that wasn't Daniel Jones' strong suit either. So maybe there is that part of Malik Neighbors' game. I believe it's in there, right? I mean, I think given the talent that he is, he's certainly capable of being that player. I think he had to adjust to the quarterback play last year. So I don't think this is like a total disaster. I mean, it'd be significantly worse if they were just, riding with Drew Lock or riding with Tommy DeVito. Right. Like you have two very different quarterbacks now in that room. And if it doesn't work out with Russ, then you're pivoting to what might be a better fantasy option in Jameis. So it's not a total disaster. I mean, does this hurt someone like Wan'Dale Robinson? I know we don't want to spend the whole pod talking about Wan'Dale, but he was relevant for a decent chunk of last season. And obviously much of what he was doing was close to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I think the volume that a Winston passing offense would kind of preclude would make you like Wan'Dale Robinson, even whatever tight end. I think the answer is going to be the Giants are clearly drafting somebody in the first or second round. You don't spend this amount of money on middle tier quarterbacks. That's a compliment, I think, certainly to Winston, but also in some regard to Russell Wilson, unless you as an offense really want to have everything operating at peak capacity. So you mentioned the over or under for wins for the Giants at 4.5. Right now, I feel like it's a slam dunk over, because that team's defense is fine enough. And if Russell Wilson and Winston can kind of produce even adequate level, we're not saying they have to make the playoffs, but to get 5 wins, I think that's certainly possible. And I think that's what the Giants want to do too. Either the scenario is Russell Wilson and Winston get injured And then you can just bet like they're under on their passing total if that was out there in the next, I don't know, a couple months or so. Or you just take the over on the wins right now. That number is going to trend up to 5.5. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's pretty quickly too. I understand the news isn't necessarily favorable, but it means the Giants don't draft a quarterback in the first round, which is a good thing, I think, for Malik Neighbors managers out there. And it also means that they're going to add another offensive weapon early on in the draft. And that should also help Neighbors and possibly Wan'Dale Robinson too. Like my whole thing is, your only good thing as an organization right now is Malik Neighbors. And he was already upset halfway through his rookie season. Yes, he has the talent to demand, I think, being upset, but you need to make sure everything is set possible to have Malik Neighbors be the franchise cornerstone that really he's replacing from Saquon Barkley. I would assume adding pieces to make Malik Neighbors better is going to be the goal for the rest of this offseason for the Giants.
So we don't have a full slate of player futures out yet. There's a handful out there. They'll continue to populate, but there are some team-specific bets at the DK Sportsbook right now. One of those is Malik Neighbors to put up at least 1,500 receiving yards this season at 4-1.
4-1. Interesting.
I don't know if that's enough for me.
Nico
Finished
Collins,
last year. He had 1,204 last year in 15 games.
Yeah, Nico Collins got close to that number in years past. Obviously, Puka and Cooper Kupp got close to that. Kupp obviously went way over. There's like a certain offense and a certain feature in that offense that would have a receiver become a 1,500-yard receiver. And Malik Neighbors, I mean, he's not like injury prone in the same way that I got to mention Devon Achane every single episode. Not in the same way that Devon Achane would be, but that's not like a 6'4", 220-pound receiver either. Like if he's accumulating Marvin Harrison peak Colts level targets, I would be concerned. Today's NFL is different. I get that, but I would be a little bit concerned. So if nothing else, you're right. I mean, it doesn't really, the juice doesn't fit the squeeze. I always say that proverb wrong, but yeah, I would not be looking at that action right now.
All right, let's go. I'm sorry, I'm hung up on the juice doesn't fit the squeeze. What is the actual expression? The juice isn't worth the squeeze. I think, right? I'm not a big.
I actually thought it was embarrassingly far off than that. You are correct. So I'm going to pat myself on the back that it wasn't like horrendously wrong, just mildly upsetting if anyone was listening.
All right, let's talk Stefon Diggs here, Joe. There is also a prop for Stefon Diggs to put up at least 1,000 receiving yards. That got up in short order at the DK Sportsbook. That is plus 125. Now, we could talk about the risk that the Patriots are taking here. Diggs turns 32 in November. You see the money on that contract, 3 for $69. It's like, well, they could get out of it at a reasonable price. Yeah, only what, sure. $29 million guaranteed. So I'm coming around on this. Like, I don't love it necessarily. Like, if I'm a Pats fan, I'm not thrilled, but what were your other options, right? I mean,
right.
We saw DK Metcalf go off the table. Everybody got priced out on Cooper Kupp. They were never going to get Devontae Adams. T. Higgins obviously re-signed. So like all these options that we thought would be out there just weren't. And I think if the alternative is going into next year, bringing back Hunter Henry as your leading wide receiver, I don't mind this. I don't mind it from a pure talent grab perspective, with the understanding that he's probably not playing out all 3 years and all 70 million of that deal in New England.
Oh, right. It's more like it's not just Hunter Henry. It's Javon Baker and Jalen Polk. And I like Demario Douglas enough, but like this isn't a fostering relationship for a quarterback that a lot of people believe is on the rise, myself included, and Drake May. Like you need to add additional things. And I actually don't think signing Stefon Diggs, and especially the money that he did, which you mentioned, that doesn't mean they're out on Tyler Lockett or Amari Cooper or second veteran receiver. This receiving core outside of Stefon Diggs is incredibly young, and they're incredibly bad. So even if Tyler Lockett is not very good or Amari Cooper is completely washed, it doesn't matter because there's value to be added. We talked about this with the Packers a couple of weeks ago. There's value to be added with some of these veterans in helping the receiving group just play football better. I mean, Amari Cooper's been in the league for how many years? He's a first-round pick. Same goes for Tyler Lockett, where he has status as a veteran. So I think the Patriots post-draft in particular are probably a prime landing spot for one of these veterans. Whereas like we always have to mention DeAndre Hopkins when he signs with the team because he's DeAndre Hopkins. Well, no, he's completely washed. In an offense like the Patriots, who desperately need other people, it's not just Stefon Diggs. I feel like this bet, you mentioned over 1,000 receiving yards, was kind of what the sportsbooks did last year with Derrick Henry over 999 rushing yards. That was the most obvious slam dunk of all time in my mind. And I have to imagine the sportsbook they got completely washed in that, because that was everybody's like mentioned, like even my friends who barely follow, like, oh, Derrick Henry, no, Ravens. I wouldn't say it's as much of a lock because we don't quite know if Stefon Diggs will be healthy. But that's the big key of this. He had that late October knee injury, done for the year. If he's able to play week 1, I do feel comfortable saying, even if it's on 100 targets, which would not be very efficient, Stefon Diggs is going to go over 1,000 receiving yards in this offense. In today's NFL, you have to have somebody that does that. We had Amari Cooper back when the Browns were really bad offensively, clear over 1,000 receiving yards. There's Drake London, for example, when the Falcons were really bad offensively with Desmond Ridder. Like that just happens in today's NFL. So I would assume, provided Stefon Diggs is healthy entering week 1, he will get over 1,000 receiving yards.
Yeah, it's a big if. It's not even is he healthy to begin the year. It's does he stay healthy? Does he look like the same guy? I mean, the targets should be there, right? I think the quarterback play is at a level that you're not overly concerned about it. 6 straight 1,000-yard seasons prior to last year, had 496 yards in about 7.5 games before that injury. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, it was again kind of a shocking dollar figure when you saw that initial contract. Then you start reading into it, and ended up being an okay deal, I thought, for the New England Patriots. All right, so this leads us somewhat, at least, into our quarterback discussion, Joe. And I know you've put together a list of kind of your tiers for dynasty quarterbacks. We got some best ball tiers as well. So I'll kind of let you shepherd this wherever you want to begin the QB discussion.
Yeah, so we're doing the offseason podcast. I always want to answer some dynasty questions. Alex is asking. The Monday Show does a lot of really good prospect analysis. So does Mario and John. And Mario and John also cover a lot of best ball. Why don't we just be the marriage to this and kind of handle both sides of things? So I went through the keep, trade, cut quarterback dynasty rankings, and I also put them alongside the best ball right now on Underdog rankings for quarterbacks. And this whole discussion was kind of built around where CJ Stroud's value is right now after a pretty dismal year too. Right, the Texans made dramatic changes to their offensive line, trade away Laramie Tunsil. They've been adding different pieces now over the past couple of offseason signings, like whatever the past the most important days of offseason signing. They've been actually very fruitful and building to that. And I think I think I can at least get to the point where saying the Texans offensive line is not dramatically worse than it was last year. Probably a little bit of a step down, but not dramatically worse. They also replaced Stefon Diggs, who was, I think, faltering a little bit with Houston before he got injured, with Christian Kirk. Although Christian Kirk coming off a serious injury of his own, I think Christian Kirk at this stage of his career, this is not just complimenting you, a Jaguars fan, Nick. I think Christian Kirk is actually a better receiver than Stefon Diggs, or at least close. So it's a 1-for-1 trade-off. The big deal in my mind is that Bobby Slowick is no longer the offensive coordinator for the Texans. That is going to make the offense for the Texans better. I refuse to be gaslit into just ignoring year 1 and thinking that was some rookie fluke. Stroud nearly led the league in passing yards in his rookie season when nobody was expecting him to do good. And yet somehow in similar to slightly worse conditions, but with a better offensive coordinator, we're just saying Stroud's like quarterback 15 right now in the best ball tier. He's around tier 5. And I say tier 5 is that matters. Dak Prescott, Justin Fields, CJ Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, Michael Penix, all drafted within the round of each other. And we're talking about quarterback 15 through 22-ish. So if you like Stroud more than Dak, I don't really care. That's not the conversation. It's just that's the tier. I think Stroud is a capable of enough quarterback to say of that group, again, Dak Prescott, Justin Fields, whatever, Trevor Lawrence, and Michael Penix, I feel comfortable saying Stroud with this offensive line, with a new play caller, and the talent we saw in year 1, can be the one that emerges above that to be a top 10 quarterback.
So essentially what you're saying is we've readjusted too much on CJ Stroud. We're course correcting a little too much for what we saw last season. I think your point on Bobby Slowick is well taken. You know, obviously you're not only taking Stefon Diggs away from that offense, but we'll see on Tank Dell, who got hurt late in the year. You know, I do worry a little bit about the weaponry early on, but I also think we view Nico Collins in a much different context now than we did heading into Stroud's rookie year.
Yeah, and Stroud made Nico Collins, I think, kind of a thing. And of course, Nico Collins still was able to emerge when healthy as one of the better fantasy assets. So there's zero concern about that. I guess I probably should have factored in Tank Dell more in year 1, but of course, Tank Dell did get injured that year as well, too. There's going to be enough receivers in that, I would just say, pick 60 through 100 range, where the Texans can add a third receiver to complement Christian Kirk and Nico Collins. And provided that offense involves the fullback more, that was one of the big reasons why CJ Stroud, I think, had play action to use in year 1. I have zero doubt that he's going to be the talent. I mean, I think back to the Packer game earlier this year. the Texans were not a good football team. They lost to the Green Bay Packers, of course, were at times not a very good football team as well, too. But Stroud single-handedly kept them in games. He made incredible throws. There were so many times, I feel like on third down, completely getting pressured because the offensive line was bad and was making off-platform throws. And we saw it in the playoffs, too, where that was the CJ Stroud from year one. So I'm relatively convinced that CJ Stroud is still an asset, both in redraft and in Dynasty. And the other part about this, you're looking at the keep trade cut rankings right now. You have the Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, obvious quarterback 1 through 3 of the Dynasty tier. Stroud is still quarterback 10. So Bo Nix and Jordan Love are in that same spot. Then you have Kyler Murray. You have the quarterbacks from last year, McCarthy and Penix. I think there is an acknowledgement that he didn't play well in year 2, and it's possible that you could be buying him lower than what his tier is right now. I would imagine most people view Bo Nix above CJ Stroud. Maybe not Jordan Love, but there might be people buying in on JJ McCarthy now that he's effectively the guaranteed starter over CJ Stroud. I would be checking in to see if there isn't some sort of lull, because the person who drafted CJ Stroud in year 1 probably wasn't assuming that they were going to hit gold like they did and might be willing to sell. And I think I'm interested in that asset too.
What are you doing with Patrick Mahomes right now, Joe? Kind of crazy that we have to ask this question. I tend to be a Mahomes optimist. I was not this past year. I had no interest in drafting him. I thought at cost, I understood the case, I suppose. And I do think losing Rashee Rice made a much bigger deal than we were. Like, it happened so early in the season that, by mid-year, we're like, what's going on with the Chiefs? Like, well, they're missing one of the 10 best receivers in my mind in football. And I think that did matter quite a bit. So obviously you get Rice back in the mix. Xavier Worthy looked better as the year went along. The Travis Kelce piece, I think, is a major question mark. I think if you're talking Dynasty, kind of moving past this coming season and looking beyond, there are some questions there. But I know as far as where Mahomes is going right now in best balls, Joe, tier 1, we got Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow. No complaints there. But Mahomes is right there with Baker in tier 2. Is that justified to you?
I'll be really surprised if he ends up being about quarterback 7 come early August, late August, because there's going to be some high risers, whether it be Baker Mayfield, who helped win people leagues in week 17 last year. I know that shouldn't matter. I know that we can kind of laugh at those people, but Baker Mayfield is going to be viewed more positively come NFL draft season, fantasy draft season next year, because he won people leagues. Bo Nix is going to be a high riser because the Broncos have made some moves. So they're going to make more moves in the NFL draft. Signing Evan Ingram, I would imagine adding at least to their running back room, and probably another receiver outside Cortland Sutton is going to have a lot of hype. We can talk about how great Bo Nix was as a rookie. I think much of that was manufactured by Sean Payton, but Sean Payton's still there. The Broncos still need to have Bo Nix. Fine. All that stuff's going to play in. I think Mahomes might fall closer to like quarterback 9, quarterback 10. And then we're talking about Caleb Williams, Jared Goff, Brock Purdy. And the crazy part is the reason why Mahomes is being drafted among the top 7 quarterbacks last year will be the exact same this year. He has Hollywood Brown theoretically healthy. Rashee Rice will be back. Xavier Worthy has proved to be an asset to that offense. So even if Travis Kelce isn't a thing, and it seems like really like November onward, Kelce does turn things around, or I don't know if that's related to the Chiefs play calling or if it's Travis Kelce or both, but he is going to have one of his best offenses like he was supposed to have this past year. And that offensive line has been improved a little bit. I'm surprised by the Thuney trade, but I think he's going to be I think the Chiefs are going to make a move at some point in the draft as well too, to improve that. So I'm assuming Patrick Mahomes in the offense, no, they're not going to be Tyreek Hill level explosive like they were a couple of years ago. And I think defenses play to that. But this is going to be the best assortment of weapons that Patrick Mahomes has ever had in his career. I feel undoubtedly true about that. And I'm trusting the talent to make good on those weapons.
Got a question in the chat here from Michael, who first of all says, "What's up, Nick and Joe? Been looking forward to this podcast all day." Thank you, Michael. We appreciate it. Now to the question: is Diggs worth staying on the March 31st FFPC final 16 cut? He would be my wide receiver 4.
So if I'm understanding the question, it would be like he would have 16 people on his roster. Would Diggs be among that group? I would want to know who are some in that like final tier of guys. Let's just say tier 13, 14, 15, 16 of players. But I think unequivocally, if you are competing this season, like if you need Diggs to be a wide receiver for a team that will make the playoffs, I would happily have that. And I see Alan Sazowski in the chat as well too. Again, Dynasty Guru for us does a lot of stuff on Mondays in particular. I would imagine you could get Stefon Diggs for like a 3rd round pick. He's 32 years old, coming off a major injury, going to a new offense. These are all the reasons why Allen and his dynasty buddies would say, no, get rid of this guy. If you are in a win now move, like Allen is always in with his 50 different teams, getting Stefon Diggs to be your wide receiver 4 in this instance, for whatever dynasty was, I love that idea. Again, if the over-under is set at 1,000 receiving yards, if you tell me Stefon Diggs will be available week 1, he is going over that mark. That offense dramatically needs him to do that. And unless he gets injured again, I would assume Stefon Diggs will be a critical enough factor to be replaceable, which is what you're looking for in your dynasty leagues right now.
Jared Goff, Joe, an interesting name for me as we look ahead here. Finished as the QB6 in terms of total fantasy points last season, and that was with a pretty rough week 18. But you look at where he comes in now in terms of best ball ADPs, he would be the QB, 11? If I'm reading this list correctly. I get it. I get the idea of some regression here. I mean, for one, it felt like last year was close to a best case scenario season for that Lions offense. Obviously the Montgomery injury toward the end was the big one, but a lot of those injuries that we talked about with Detroit all season were concentrated on the defensive side. Now they bring back just about everybody. There's still a ton of talent on this roster, but losing both coordinators, specifically losing Ben Johnson.
Yes.
How much of a concern is that for you?
Okay, so the big deal for me as somebody who had Jared Goff in a pretty important stake league that ended up saving me a $400 bill, that week 1 through like 7 was horrendous. He had the 3 touchdowns against the Titans, just 15 total attempts. Of course, it was the Titans and frankly the Lions and all of the NFC North beat up on the AFC South, but you were kind of surviving off touchdowns alone because the volume wasn't there. Well, when the injuries happened to the defense, then you had basically a shootout every single day moving forward. And that was, you think about the Bills game, for example, where Goff was quarterback 2 with Josh Allen being quarterback 1 in that example. There was a number of different instances. I would really, really love to know inside Detroit's building. We're not going to be able to know, but I would really love to know, what is the offensive philosophy going to be? Because if it is basically replicating Ben Johnson, which I don't know why you wouldn't, you're playing to Jared Goff's strengths in that instance, then Goff probably should be lower than quarterback 11. Just for everyone listening along, from best ball, Bo Nix, Kyler Murray, Caleb Williams, Jared Goff, all in that sort of draft range, as well as Brock Purdy. Right below that, Justin Herbert, my guy, Jordan Love, Drake May. Again, let's just say within 2 or 3 rounds of best ball. We're asking mostly in best ball to draft at least 2 quarterbacks, if not 3. So the strategy around Jared Goff is a little bit different in best ball than it would become early August or late August. If Goff is your quarterback 1, I'm a little bit nervous in redraft. And that would kind of apply to Dynasty as well, too, if we're saying by year basis. Because I don't know if this offense will want Jared Goff to be the guy that we saw the second half of the season. They needed Jared Goff to be, and he was. And they're going to have Amon-Ra St. Brown back. They have Jameson Williams back. I don't know if they're going to draft another receiver. I would imagine basically all the Lions picks are going to be dedicated to the defense. But this is an offense that should be completely fine and functioning at peak capacity, which is involving Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery a ton. So I would much rather have Jordan Love. I think I might have Justin Herbert, depending on what the Chargers do as well, ranked above Jared Goff. I just see a scenario where the Lions are intentionally handicapping themselves to help their team better. But previously, Jared Goff had only 30 passing touchdowns, 29-30 the past 2 years. He went for 37 this year. That's because they had to. I don't think they're going to have to this season.
Got a super chat here. Thank you, Michael. He says, this is a SFBB Dynasty League. Purdy or Kyler Murray? That's the first question. And question 2, is Stefon Diggs a top 36 wide receiver? So, Joe, we'll start with Purdy versus Murray.
Well, actually, I'm going to start with Diggs because the answer is yes. Like I don't think there's actually more discussion than he is a top 36 receiver this year. No doubt in my mind. I'm keeping him if that's kind of the cost range. The quarterback conversation, again, from Superflex Dynasty, would you rather have Brock Purdy or Kyler Murray, is really interesting because on Keep Trade Cut, it's effectively the same spot for both. I had made tiers for it. Kyler Murray's at the top end of tier 5 around JJ McCarthy and Michael Penix. Cam Ward was also in the conversation, and Brock Purdy was in that mix too. Keep Trade Cut had Kyler Murray a bit more valued than Brock Purdy, obviously from the rushing perspective. Brock Purdy is younger. I had neglected including this in our video last week because I figured I'd ruffle enough feathers saying trade away HN at all costs that I didn't want to add more fuel to the fire. I'm at the point where I'd be fine selling Kyler Murray. And I've always, I want to be full disclosure, I've always kind of been lower on Kyler Murray than most of my RotoWire colleagues. You know, Mario and John, we call them disciples here of Mario and John. They are far higher on Kyler Murray than I have been throughout the course of his career. I don't think the Cardinals offense had deficiencies last year because of Kyler Murray necessarily, but it feels very clear and very obvious in relation to Justin Herbert, even a Jordan Love or like a Drake May. You have to do things differently throwing the football with Kyler Murray as your quarterback. And the Cardinals have been losing football games more often than not with Kyler Murray as your quarterback. At some point, there might be a change. I don't know if it's next year, but I would be more surprised if Kyler Murray emerges in the quarterback tier of like Caleb Williams and Drake May. I'll be more surprised if over the course of this season, he gets to be valued that way, which he's young enough where he could. I'd be more surprised with that than if he were to fall further down. And I don't know if that's being cut or Marvin Harrison isn't used well again. The Cardinals fire their offensive coordinator like they probably should have this past season, whatever else. Like there's a number of reasons why. So I think the answer is still Kyler Murray, despite all of that. But the gap between Kyler Murray and Brock Purdy is really, really close to me.
These are both quarterbacks trending in downward directions to me. I mean, the Niners have done nothing but shed talent on both sides of the ball this offseason. There are now talks of, do they need to trade Brandon Ayuk? I mean, what are you getting for Ayuk at this point, right? I mean, you'd be selling low, you're selling off the contract. He's got multiple tears in the knee. It's kind of a lose-lose, I guess, in some ways, if you don't trust that he's necessarily going to be healthy, but I don't think you're going to get anything, in terms of reasonable value on the trade market. And, with the Cardinals right now, you kind of alluded to this, but it feels like they're just going to run it back. And I don't think that's a good idea. This is not a team that showed a lot of promise last year. It's a team that to me got worse as the year went along. And I think you can make the case maybe for some touchdown progression for Kyler Murray. Is Trey McBride going to go basically the entire year without catching a touchdown? Probably not.
Right.
But it requires some faith in a leap for Marvin Harrison. They made no other real improvements in that pass catching core. You're bringing back James Conner yet again. Like there's nothing exciting right now. There's nothing that tells me, oh, this is going to be a different version of the Cardinals.
Yeah. And if you're the Cardinals, you're kind of sniffing around the 6 or 7 seed. I know the Commanders beat the Lions in round 1. Or round 2, but most teams aren't doing that when you're at the 6 or 7 spot. So you're kind of looking at a one and done or maybe win one game scenario. They're not Super Bowl contenders, even in a weak NFC. And again, I think this year is going to be weak relative to the AFC. You're kind of stuck if you're the Cardinals. I think Kyler Murray is going to play well enough where you're not in position to add another quarterback. To add another quarterback means you're completely changing the way the offense has been functioning before, because Kyler Murray is so uniquely different than everyone else. It might be as simple as just adding a speed threat so Marvin Harrison can just be an alpha receiver instead of being the speed threat for the team that didn't have any. They aren't doing that, though. Like that move, that hasn't happened yet. Maybe it will in the draft, but I'm just been surprised. So the way fantasy football is played is going to make Kyler Murray valuable because he's probably getting 30 rushing yards a game. He's probably throwing for 200, from about 12 points right there. And while Brock Purdy has more touchdown upside, Kyler Murray is going to run the ball more to just get more points at the end of the season. But it might be like when you look at the ESPN standard scoring at the end of the year, Kyler Murray, 285, Brock Purdy, 281. But you're going to have more frustrating games from Kyler Murray than you are Brock Purdy. I don't know. It's a tough spot right now with the rushing aspect. I think Kyler Murray narrowly is above Brock Purdy in my mind.
All right, Joe, I'm just going to mention this name and I'm going to head out, go take care of some things around the house. Where are we at on Jordan Love right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good layup for any Packer fan. I was actually thinking about this in the drive-in today. It was a disappointing year 2 from a fan to watch Jordan Love play, but I'm already talking myself into it. We lost Damian Lillard, we being Packer fans, who are also Buck fans, lost Damian Lillard. He is going to be no longer a factor for the playoffs. So I already have to think positively for the next sports team. You're looking at me, Nick, like
I was wondering where that was going. It was like,
I've already given up the Bucs season, so I'm looking for the next professional sports team for us. The Milwaukee Brewers don't count because Mark Aniaso doesn't actually care to spend money to make the team relevant. So I'm writing off Jordan Love being injured for most of the year. That's how I'm choosing to keep my fandom alive as a Packer fan, that it wasn't just a year 2 regression, that the knee injury was pretty critical in Brazil and never really fully recovered from, which I think is partially true. There were so many turnovers in the first half of the year, first half of the games he played, and that got course corrected probably to a detriment. Remember in year 1 of Jordan Love starting where it felt like there was a receiver open by 10 yards every single game. That was not occurring with Matt LaFleur at all this year. And I wonder if it's defense is catching on to LaFleur's scheme, or just that Jordan Love was being recognized as a more mobile threat than he was in year 2. Because if that is the case, if Jordan Love now is a more mobile threat, means defenses have key on that, you're going to have opportunities for Jaden Reed. You're going to have opportunities for Romeo Dobbs. And I truly believe a receiver added at some point here, not just Mecole Hardman, but a crucial difference maker to do something for that offense, whether it be Jaden Higgins or somebody of that ilk among the draft out there. So I think the touchdown opportunity for Jordan Love is clearly there. Josh Jacobs gobbled up a lot in the second half of the year, but Jordan Love is going to be a 30 touchdown a year quarterback, I think, moving forward. Matt LaFleur is too good of a play caller. The Packers defense is good enough generating turnovers now, at least I think in Jeff Hafley's system, that there's going to be opportunities for it. Is he ever going to elevate into quarterback 6 or 7 tier? No. So if this is an opportunity in Dynasty to trade out, I don't know if that really is there after a bummer of a year 2. But I think in best ball, he's actually one of my favorite targets. You look at that best ball range. Again, I kind of repeated before, but Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, Drake May. I like Love over every one of those guys. And a little bit further down, Dak Prescott, Fields, Stroud, Trevor Lawrence. Other than your boy, Trevor Lawrence, I think Jordan Love is actually the one I like more. And even above that, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, I would take Jordan Love there too. So I think he's in my quarterback 10 range for redraft and specifically best ball when I know I can partner at least one other quarterback. But Dynasty, we're at a tough spot, I think. Tough spot.
What worries me for best ball specifically with Love, Joe, is we didn't really see the splash games last year, right? It was the Minnesota game in week 4. And that was a unique circumstance where they were down, 4 scores at halftime, and they just had to throw the ball around the entire second half. Like, I mean, you look from week 8 on, he had no more than 2 touchdowns in any game. I don't know how to value the lack of rushing production because of the knee injury. I think that was a huge part of it. I don't know if there was really ever a point after that injury happened where he was like fully 100%. I think the Packers were kind of protecting that on the fly. I thought he was hesitant at times down the stretch where there were running opportunities. Like we're never looking at, rushing yards being a huge part of the equation for him necessarily, but I think in best ball specifically, like, yeah, he's going to be steady week to week, but you still want the splashier weeks. And those were there in 2023.
I think there will be, I think there will be splashier weeks to come for Love. Again, part of this was Josh Jacobs really week 11 onward was scoring 2+ touchdowns a game. And well, what if that becomes a slant route to Romeo Dobbs? Remember that throw from, 2 years ago where he completely threaded within 4 people? Like that's where we're playing a game with an oblong shaped ball. Like there's just going to be some variance and far more variance than other sports when it comes to us. I think Jordan Love actually has more splash games out there. The positives from year 2, and there weren't many, the deep ball did improve. He got significantly better at throwing the deep ball, whether it be for pass interference, not great, but also completing it to receivers than anything he was doing in year 1. I felt like seeing in the second half that he wasn't generating as many turnovers as it was in the first half was also encouraging. That there clearly was a mechanical thing, or that Jordan Love himself had to right his brain a little bit more. Yes, it came at the expense of big plays or splash games like you're referring to, but that was very clearly an emphasis, and that Jordan Love delivered is better than we could say for a lot of the quarterbacks like Justin Fields with the Bears during his time, right? Like he can never stop doing that at critical instances. So Michael in the chat had asked how many more receivers do the Packers need? The big key, and why I feel hesitant to say I'm completely buying Jordan Love this year, Christian Watson being out for what will feel like the entirety of the season matters consequentially. Because it's not that Christian Watson was really doing a whole lot. He was a big play threat for that team. But his role in the Matt LaFleur scheme as a deep threat specialist who can actually do something, not Marquez Valdes-Scantling, matters just about every single way. Like you can look at all the metrics. When Christian Watson does not play, the Packers offense is consequentially worse. So I would assume that is addressed in the draft. The Packers were, I believe, sniffing around DK Metcalf to the extent they were. Clearly confirms that they agree they need to do that. That's where I go to Jaden Higgins, who should be available at pick 23, is a big-bodied guy like that role seems to require, and can be a speed threat. I don't want to say the Packers are drafting a receiver in the first round, because you have been wrong for 22 years if that was the case. But this might be the year with the draft in Green Bay where the Packers choose to do that with a guy like Higgins at the board.
Well, there was one general manager at Ted McMillan's pro day.
Did see
Joe,
that
and
as
that was
well.
Brian Gutekunst. That will require a trade up, however, I think from the
did
Green
see
Bay
that
Packers,
as well.
which that would be something. It's one thing to not take a receiver in the first round and then to break that streak by trading up. We will see. I would not be counting on that. All right, I want to hit a couple more names here quick, Joe. We'll go a little bit faster through some of these. You did a good job in our little document here breaking down the dynasty versus the best ball ranks, and I think going a little bit lower in best ball is a lot of fun. Like, I think we know the story, we know the book on a lot of these guys who are tier 2, tier 3, but when you get beyond CJ Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, Michael Penix, you get into JJ McCarthy, you get into Tua, Matthew Stafford, Bryce Young, Cam Ward. I don't want to talk about Ward quite yet because we just don't know the landing spot,
We can
whether
wait
it's
on that,
Tennessee or not. But Tua, I'm out. I'm telling you, I'm out. This is maybe the case for Tua is like this. This is the Mike McDaniel save your job season. This is the Tyreek Hill lock back in, Jalen Waddle lock back in season. I'm just really low on this Dolphins team, man. I'm really, really low on them. I worry about how it looked once Tua came back. I think it was a convenient excuse for a while to say, oh, well, Tyreek Hill's not doing anything because they got Tyler Huntley throwing the ball around or Skylar Thompson or whoever. But it just never looked consistently better over the second half of the season when they had Tua.
And I don't want to be cruel, but compared to like an Achilles injury with Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers, a concussion shouldn't, if you're medically cleared, like the Dolphins said Tua was, shouldn't see obvious fall off from play before the concussion. This isn't an injury that would necessarily require that to occur. So I agree with you. It's funny. We're talking about dynasty. We're talking about best ball. I like Tua in redraft. And to say that if I'm playing him on a week-to-week basis and I can just drop whoever, pick somebody else up, there's an angle to work in my mind. Now, I would probably go like Tua and I don't know. I'm just going to say Stafford, even though it's not necessarily quite the answer I'd do. But if I can stream week to week on one, I feel like Tua and the Dolphins are going to beat up on bad opponents, because that's been the thing now the past 3 seasons, that the Dolphins look great. They're world beaters. They're a fantastic team until they run into anyone absolutely competent in any capacity. And then Tua looks bad. The offense doesn't function nearly as well. And lo and behold, you have a guy that's probably outside the top 15. In the games in which the Tua could be facing, I want to say the Patriots, they're actually pretty good defense, but anybody in the AFC South, you could probably start Tua that week in a redraft. Do I want to risk a 4 or longer game absence if Tua, knock on wood, were to suffer another injury? Absolutely not. So in best ball, he's completely removed, because realistically, the answer is there's 20 quarterbacks minimum in best ball that I think are totally fine. You're probably not finding the Baker Mayfield of last year, where who's quarterback 18, 22 range, and ended up being quarterback 6, I think, even a little bit higher than that. I don't know if that's occurring, but I'll gladly take Drake May. I'll gladly take Matthew Stafford in that capacity, because I know in best ball, those guys will at least be in my starting lineup at certain points of the season. Tua might too, but he might be also my bench for 2 months, and I'm out of the best ball opportunity. So I want nothing to do with him in best ball.
Finding the next Baker is interesting. I think that's a good point. He did finish as QB4, by the way, in terms of total fantasy points last year. In terms of like just without even thinking about this, names that come to mind, I think you could make a case for Drake May. I still don't know if the weapons are there. I don't know if I would necessarily nominate him. I think you could make a case for Caleb Williams. I don't know if he's going late enough that he really belongs in that discussion.
I'll interrupt you. The answer to this is something that's going to warm your heart, Nick.
No, don't do it.
Trevor Lawrence is this year's Baker Mayfield. We actually have an offensive coordinator who can call plays decisively, effectively, use the talent by all means that Jaguars have. And Trevor Lawrence, I will be steadfast, is a good quarterback in the NFL. I would be happy to trade for him in Dynasty right now. Evidently, the Jacksonville is sniffing around Ted McMillan as well, too, to add to Brian Thomas and everything else. And I would imagine you're going to see less Tank Bigsby and somebody they draft in day 3 early who will be better to complement Etienne. That offensive line got a little bit better as well, too. I think the answer really is, again, it's not quarterback 18 to quarterback 4, but more like quarterback 18 to quarterback 10. Trevor Lawrence is going to have massive games. I'm convinced, Nick, that he is still a really good quarterback, and he's been encumbered by horrible play calling and head coaches that just kick their punters and kickers for no reason. This is not on Trevor Lawrence, and I'm convinced that he is still going to be a massive fantasy asset this year.
So the other name I was going to mention in this context, and thank you for everything that you just said. I appreciate that. I agree on all levels. Michael Penix. Could Penix be that guy?
I think that's a totally fine one. And my other one would be would have been JJ McCarthy.
Yeah.
There's going to be a point in early August where McCarthy's draft range is just going to be hyped up where he doesn't qualify for this question. So I think you're kind of preemptively helping me avoid that. Michael Penix might get to that point too. There is going to be a subsection of people drafting in early August who are going to be tired with all the Staffords and Lawrences and Dak Prescotts who have disappointed them, and they want the new sexy thing. Yeah. And maybe McCarthy and Penix will be, not to make a joke about Penix's last name, but like that they will be. Don't roll your eyes. The listeners can get
what was
there.
The joke?
I'm just, we could get there. This is a PG show, Nick. They can figure out how I made that joke. But I think there's an opportunity for the Falcons offense really to be more reliant on Bijan Robinson. Like if I'm Atlanta, who mysteriously still has Kirk Cousins as your backup, you want your rookie quarterback to be as successful as possible. Much like JJ McCarthy, I think they're going to lean on the running game quite a bit. I think the Falcons will have Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, an offensive line that's kind of dictating the tempo, and Michael Penix, who looked really good. I loved his relationship specifically with Drake London. That's going to be like more of a 28 to 32 attempt quarterback and not a 40 attempt quarterback like I think Matthew Stafford could be for the Rams, for example. So that's the difference of it, where best case scenario for the Falcons, Michael Penix is not a game manager. That's not fair to him, but he is not being relied on to win games. Same with JJ McCarthy. And that would make me a little bit hesitant to acknowledge what will probably be a top 16 draft value for some of these year 2 quarterbacks.
I don't think Penix wants to be a game manager, man. I know it was a unique situation at the end of last year, but I don't see a lot of game management in his style. Like the way he operates, to me, it's like, obviously they could put training wheels on him if they want. And, just getting a couple game sample out of him at the end of the year, to me, that matters. With McCarthy, you're just going in totally blind. Should be a good situation. Great head coach, great weapons around him. I get all that, but I don't mind the weapons in Atlanta, right? I mean, we're excluding Kyle Pitts from this, but I mean, Drake London was fantastic with Penix in that sample. I mean, Darnell Mooney took a step forward. Even felt like every other week, Kadero Hodge or Ray McLeod are making plays. I think you'd ideally upgrade that third receiver spot. Bijan Robinson was great with Penix at the end of the year. Like there's a lot to like there, I think. And if you're looking for, if we're talking that tier 5, tier 6, it's like, you know what you're getting with Dak Prescott at this point. You know what you're getting with Tua. You absolutely know what you're signing up for with Matthew Stafford. There's still a lot of variance with someone like Bryce Young, but to me, like Penix is like the obvious upside guy of that group.
Week 16, his first start was against the Giants. Of course, not a very good football team. 27 attempts, 18 of them completed for 202 passing yards. Then you have the Commanders, who ended up being one of the better teams in the NFL. I don't think we really even realized that in week 17, but they were obviously a playoff caliber team. 223 passing yards, close to 50% completion rate, at the one interception. And of course, the Panthers game where that got out of hand, and that's week 18 tomfoolery, goes for 300 yards, has the 2 touchdowns passing. He did run for touchdown as well too. I mean, 11 total rushing yards in 3 games? That's not a runner. But if he's not a runner, then is he much different than Matthew Stafford? Like with the Giants, I'm sorry, but with the Rams, you have Devontae Adams, you have Puka Nacua, you have an offense that definitely needs Matthew Stafford to function. Like you're already falling into it, Nick. You're already getting into it. The new sexy thing, we haven't seen this before. Okay, well, Michael Penix is going to go crazy. Matthew Stafford's going to throw for more passing yards, probably throw for as many touchdowns, and be drafted 4 rounds later than Michael Penix. Like I'll just take the guy.
There's a 4-round difference.
Well, I'm just assuming.
Okay.
Come August, there will be.
Yeah.
Come August.
Okay. No, that's fair. That's fair. I'm higher on Stafford this year than I was going into last year. That's totally fine. I'm just saying a lot of these are known commodities. Penix to me, still not necessarily that. There is rushing upside with Trevor Lawrence. We haven't seen it as much as I would like. I do wonder though, with the amount of injuries that he sustained, with the amount of concussions and hard hits, if that is something that they do try to phase out in some ways, but the ability is there. We know that.
Baker didn't have to rush for the Buccaneers to be quarterback 4. Like that wasn't really one of the skill sets. So Lawrence can do that. I mean, to be fair, Penix can probably run for 300 yards too. What we're trying to identify is what's the guy in the last round of your redraft leagues? What's the guy in like round 14 of your best ball that can be a person that's in your lineup at quarterback at expense of, I'm just going to go for redraft. Like I would rather take Matthew Stafford in the last round of my redraft leagues than to take Michael Penix over this year's Najee Harris. I'm sorry, like past year, like round 10 running back. Like that's probably the range in which some people are buying Michael Penix, if not a little bit lower. Like the Josh Palmer range of receivers, which of course was bad last year, but I want the listeners to contextualize it for themselves. You guys listening to a late March podcast probably do know what the ADP was from last season. Do you want to take that wide receiver 40, 45, or do you want to take a quarterback in the very last round of your drafts that could be playing? That's what matters to me in best ball.
All right. Good stuff, Joe. We will put a bow on the quarterback discussion. Excellent questions in the chat. Appreciate everybody chiming in. If you are listening to this in podcast form, make sure you check us out over on the RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube page. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you're subscribed over there. We'll keep bringing you great football content throughout the offseason. Joe, looking forward to see what we conjure up for next week and continuing to do this as we get closer to the draft.
Sounds good. Thanks, man.